Ko mangatua te maunga, ko taire te awa. No o te poti aho, ko Anna Campbell tōku ingoa, tēnā koutou katoa. I'd like to acknowledge mana whenua nai tahu today, and in doing so, I'd also like to acknowledge that for thousands of years, we have understood the connection between food and health. For thousands of years, we've understood the connection between food and environment. It just seems to be in the last few decades that we've lost some of that. And as I reflect on this, and as a scientist, I find it interesting to explore that we seem to have lost our ability to walk the fine line between what we know scientifically and what we don't know, ambiguity, the known and unknown. And I think this is something that ancient shamans and people who have walked before us understood very deeply. And in my talk today, I'd like to explore that as we go on. But before I do that, I want you to imagine an 8-year-old boy or girl growing up today. This 8-year-old boy or girl will have eaten more sugar in their 8 years than a person 50 years ago will have eaten in their entire lifetime. It's pretty sobering. And what this means is that we're seeing much earlier onset of chronic diseases like diabetes. And when I talk about chronic diseases, I am referring to heart disease, diabetes, dementia, a lot of autoimmune diseases, strokes, and so forth. And the World Health Organization has identified that chronic diseases are the #1 threat to human health. By the year 2030, 3 out of 5 Americans will die from a chronic disease. As a geneticist, it's also fascinating for me to understand that less than 5% of chronic disease development is due to our DNA, which means 95% is our modern lifestyle. And when we think of what drives chronic disease, it's our diet, it's our stress levels, it's our sleep, it's our exercise, it's what we're doing every day. My business partner, Darcy, who's out there somewhere, has a chronic disease called sarcoidosis. And that led him on a journey of trying to understand what underpinned chronic disease. He has a line, it drives me nuts, he uses it all the time, but this line is that inflammation is the smoking gun at the scene of every crime. Because fundamentally, chronic inflammation underpins chronic disease. Don't get me wrong, inflammation is really important. It's our body's defense mechanism. When we go out and sprain an ankle, our body inflames, we shoot all the right chemicals and compounds to that part of our ankle so that we can heal quickly. Similarly, when we contract a virus, we inflame, we promote the production of white blood cells, we have this amazing immune system that reacts straight away to help us become healthy again. Chronic inflammation is what happens when that system is constantly triggered. And it's constantly triggered by the food that we eat, or it's constantly triggered by the fact that we're picking up our phones 150 times a day, some of us. And every time we pick up that phone, we're shooting cortisol into our brain and promoting that inflammatory response. Okay, I'll get off my pet topic. And I want to bring to you the world of the gut microbiome. When I walked out on the stage today, I walked here as a human being, and that's who you saw alongside my fantastic coat. What you didn't think about or see was that I also brought with me 1 trillion microbes. And as I look out in this audience, each one of you is also carrying about 1 trillion microbes, so there's quite some party going on every time I breathe. In fact, every time I breathe, I'm breathing in fungal spores, bacteria spores, protozoa. It's a real party out there. Scientifically, we have completely not understood this whole world at all in terms of our own human bodies until the last decade or so. And what we're now understanding is that these microbes play a really critical role in our absorption of micronutrients and food. They also play a critical role in our immune system response, as well as our brain signals to the brain and our brain health. And what's happening in our gut microbiome is the biodiversity is dramatically decreasing. So we're seeing fewer species of bacteria in our guts than we have in the past. There's a fantastic study where they examined a cohort of Asian immigrants who went to the US, who shifted to the US. And in Asia, they had quite a plant-rich diet. And as they moved to the US, they moved to more processed foods and higher meat consumption. What happened so directly correlated with how long they were in the US was the decline of the biodiversity of their gut microbes. Alongside of that, the actual species in their gut changed as well. Prior to starting my new company, I was a long-term agriculturalist, and I'm passionate about agriculture and have been for a long time. What really struck me as I was thinking about human health was how closely it paralleled what's happening in agriculture. 90% of the plants that we grow in agriculture come from 15 plant species. That's despite the fact there are over 50,000 plant species that we could be growing commercially. Of the 90%, or of those 15 plant species that we're growing, there are the big four: rice, wheat, maize, and potatoes. And of those four, 40% of that product is used for animal feed for us to eat. So what we're seeing is that we're growing less and less in terms of the species that we're growing, and we're taking up more and more land to do that. And what's happening is we're seeing a global ecosystem collapse. We're losing species at a faster rate than in any of the Earth's past extinction events. This is not all on agriculture, but agriculture has played its part. And as a passionate agriculturalist, I'm also adamant that agriculture can and must be part of the solution. But it comes down to asking the question, what do we incentivize? And what do we incentivize throughout our whole value chain? Right now, when I walk into a supermarket, I see a bunch of packaged food full of high fructose corn syrup, which quite frankly is the devil for our health, and other cheap ingredients. Yet I see farmers working on a daily basis producing high quality, beautiful product. So there's something going wrong within our system. We always seem to go to base level and ask farmers to grow things differently or to do things differently, yet we don't incentivize them to do that. We incentivize them to yield more and to increase growth rates. We don't incentivize them to grow different things and be more biodiverse. So we need to ask some fundamental questions of our food system. So I ranted about this for many years, and then I decided that I needed to walk the talk and start my own business focusing on food and health. And I want to highlight a little bit of that, but I also want to tell you about a few other great businesses. And one of those businesses is a New Zealand company called the Pure Food Company. And they were started by two young men whose stepfather suffered from throat cancer and dysphagia, was unable to swallow. When they went to find what they could feed him, they were just horrified by the options they had. So they started a company where they developed highly nutritious, pureed food, rich in protein and high in plant compounds that were healthy for older people and for people who didn't have an ability to swallow. They're now exporting this product to hospitals and healthcare systems globally. I think this is just a fantastic story. My own company, Zestt, we recognise that inflammatory pathways and the way that we've got into chronic disease is not a single pathway. And our response to inflammation is not a single pathway either. So the products we developed are multi-pathway and multi-compounds, and we use incredible New Zealand products wherever we can, including very, very wonderful New Zealand-grown black currants here in Canterbury by a company called Viberi. They're really, really rich in a class of compounds called anthocyanins, and anthocyanins are the things that make fruits and vegetables purple, and they reduce inflammation. They're also antiviral and promote oxygen flow around the brain. Another product that we use is grown up in Northland and originates from South America. It's called Yacon, and it's amazing for gut health. It's high in fructooligosaccharides, which promote the production of good bacteria in our gut. I want to shout out if at afternoon tea you got to taste some of that delicious hemp-based chicken. This is another New Zealand company, Plant, which is putting planet and health at the core of their business. And when I look at the emerging protein market globally, where we've missed out is health. So a lot of the products that we have produced globally, high in salt, high in sugar, and we need to shift the game in terms of the emerging protein opportunity. And one more company I want to shout out to. I only just read about this company. This is a company that is producing a beef product out of dairy beef, which can be an issue within our dairy industry. But they're also adding, and I'm quite excited about this because everyone downgrades or doesn't like offal, they're actually adding liver to this bar. And liver is really, really high in bioavailable iron and fantastic for elderly people, but also for pregnant women. So finally, I would ask all of us in this room to think about breaking bread with our ancestors, to start walking the line of knowledge and science and being comfortable with ambiguity. Science doesn't have the answers to everything because we can't ask questions that are big enough. I would ask that you recognize that we as humans are complex. Our interaction with the microbes inside us, with the world around us, are complex, and that we look to design a food system that is similarly complex. And in doing so, we promote the health of ourselves and the health of our planet. Tēnā koutou katoa.